So, ladies and gentlemen, damas and kungi, spadarni, I want to welcome you to the first panel discussion here in Ziemelsala, in the Nordic tent. I'm Stefan Eriksson, the director of the Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Riga. It's my great pleasure to open this Nordic tent at LAMPA this year. We have been a supporter of LAMPA for many years, from the very start actually. I think also one can say that inspiration for this type of democracy or conversation festival has come from the Nordic, where we had this tradition. I must say that in Latvia, LAMPA and its organizers have taken this even to a higher level. Most Nordic visitors that come here are very impressed of what they are doing here. Why we think this is important? We feel that Latvia is a neighbor of the Nordic countries. We think that we have common experiences. We have knowledge that we need to share with each other in the format of conversation that take place here. We can learn from each other. And that's the main reason why we continue to be a supporter of LAMPA and bring also Nordic voices to Latvia. But outside of the Nordic-Baltic region, there are also other countries of importance. One country that lies especially close to my heart is Belarus. And one could argue that Belarus also is part of this region, of the wider Baltic Sea region or the wider Nordic-Baltic region. And this is an issue we will discuss and talk about at this first panel. And it's my great honor to give the floor for a short introductory remark to Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who's come here, the leader of Democratic Belarus. Sviatlana, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you for applause. I'm really thrilled to be here today on the LAMPA Festival. It's my first one, but I'm absolutely sure already that it's not the last one, because everything is so amazing here. And I'm really grateful that topic of Belarus will be sounded several times during this festival. Because I'm always saying that Belarus is forgotten part of Europe, and our fight now for returning our country to our European family of nations. And the speakers of this panel is a real proof that Belarus belongs to Nordic Baltic region, and each of you supported our fight, our country in different ways. And of course here I speak about Stefan Eriksson. During your diplomatic work in Minsk, Stefan became a symbol of solidarity with Belarus. Stefan has learned Belarusian language perfectly and practically became a rock star in Belarus. He showed how that it's so cool to be Belarusian and it's so cool to learn Belarusian language. Dear Stefan, thank you so much for having such a noble heart, dear. Here I also speak about Lizaveta Dubinka-Gusha, Danish Cultural Institute, where Lizaveta works, became a key partner for numerous Belarusian cultural initiatives promoting Belarusian culture, language, and arts. Strong national identity, I believe, is the best antidote to Ruski Mir, to Russian world, and this is what keep our nation together. A few months ago, I was in Denmark, and I was amazed how many Danes are interested in Belarus. And one of these Danes is Brigitte Hammer, and I hope that today she could explain such phenomenon. Brigitte, thank you so much for your work in Beladania Cultural Society, for your dedication to Belarusian cause, and I have learned, from your works that one of the Danish queens was of Belarusian origin. It was Sophia of Minsk, and I hope that your book about her will be translated into Belarusian language soon, and Belarusian people will be so proud to learn that they have their own Danish queen. Also here, of course, I want to greet Martins Stakis. Martins, we will never forget your brave gesture when in 2021, during the Ice Hockey Championship, you rose Belarusian white, red, white flag in front of your city hall. You clearly showed that Latvia distinguished Belarusian regime from Belarusian people. And not surprisingly that you immediately became person non grata in Lukashenko's Belarus, but I think you might be proud of this. And I just want to say a couple of words about our flag. Belarusian white, red, white flag and your red, white, red have similar legend how these flags appeared. Both in one of the battles, a military chief was badly wounded, and he was wrapped by in white sheet. And when this sheet was covered with blood, this sheet was raised as a symbol of a sheet full of blood was symbol of uprising of fight. It's just a legend, but it's very inspiring actually. And of course, dear Brindis, thank you for your efforts to bring Belarus to Nordic Council. I hope that with your help, Belarus will be able to participate in Nordic Council events. And thank you for strengthening our Belarusian-Icelandic relationship. Our countries might be divided by kilometers, but we are united by the same values. And we need allies like you in Europe. We need more powerful women in politics and more women in power at all. And also, let me greet our Belarusian historian Andrei Kotlerchuk. Andrei dedicated his life to research the ties between the Belarus and Nordic Baltic nations. His work underlined how deep our histories are interconnected. And I hope during listening to you today, I hope to learn more about our ties. Our famous writer Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, in her first interview after she has received a Nobel Peace Prize award, said that she wanted Belarus to be like Scandinavian or Baltic countries. She actually expressed the dream of Belarusians, because democracy, prosperity, rule of law, respect to human rights, cultural diversity, all these are what we admire in your countries and look up to in our struggle. We are lucky to be your neighbors. A year ago, we Belarusian Democratic Forces declared Belarusian European future as our priority. Belarus should be part of the European Union. I know that it might seem like a distant goal at the moment, but on this path we can have intermediate goal, integration to the Nordic Baltic community. And I'm looking forward the moment when Nordic Baltic 8 will become Nordic Baltic 9. And with your support, I'm sure that it is possible. So thank you so much once again for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this discussion and hope to learn more interesting connection between Belarus and your countries. Thank you so much for coming.
So now I give the word to our moderator, Elizaveta Dubinka-Gushta, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to have the first panel of the Nordic Council of Ministers at LAMPA Festival dedicated to the topic about Nordic-Baltic connections and Belarus. At the center of our discussion today, is Belarus and the proposal to bring it closer to the Nordic and Baltic states as one of the countries of the Baltic Sea region. Geographically and historically, Belarus has been perceived as a border country. Timothy Snyder called it Bloodlands, for example. Sometimes it's also called a bridge between East and West, or used to be. But here we would like to add another important dimension, that of North and South. Because for Belarusian geographical position, this is not a less important connection than the traditional one that we usually talk about, West and East. So today, would like also to highlight that we talk about another additional dimension, North. Thank you very much, Madam President. You've already introduced the speakers. I was planning to do that, so you made my job much easier. I will just remind our guests today about the names of our speakers. Today's discussion will seek answers to questions: how to bring Belarus closer to the Nordic and Baltic countries in the current very difficult political situation, and also how to include or to bring Belarus on the agenda of the leaders of the Nordic countries. I would like to address the first question to the President of the Nordic Council of Ministers, Madam Haraldsdottir. In your opinion, what is Norden's view on Belarus? And I understand it's a bit difficult, a bit tricky to talk about it these days, because we need to all the time distinguish between two Belaruses. But nevertheless, if we talk about democratic Belarus and its possible future role as a stakeholder in the regional security and prosperity, could you please share some thoughts about that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I have to say this is the first democratic festival I visit, so it's a great thing to be here, and it's total honor to meet you again, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. So, Belarus to the Nordics. I have to say, Belarus has a special place in my heart, because I was there as an observer in the election the year before this presidential election that were definitely not right. So I saw myself with own eyes how they handled something that, in my opinion, should be a democratic festival when you have election, because that's, of course, the real democratic festival are elections. But when they are misread like they were in Belarus, it's so sad. So I was following all the news after the last presidential election and what was happening in Belarus. So I was very much honored when I came into the Nordic Council that we were having this session in Reykjavik, that we managed to have someone from your team, Sviatlana. We also managed to have Kara-Murza from the opposition in Russia, and Ukrainian parliamentarians. And we see that in the Nordic Council, how important it is to have this democratic discussion, being open-minded to discuss different issues. And I have to say that the Baltic Assembly has assisted it a lot in this. And I think the Nordics have a special connection to the Baltics, and we do a lot of work together. And I can see that Belarus, Ukraine, hopefully at some time also Russia, but they're way far from that, that we can develop more into this democratic neighboring discussion. So also after this, I have learned that we have actually a historical ties between Iceland and Belarus, and that is of very much interest. But just to say this, I think Belarus, hopefully, I am optimistic, so I hope for real election where the people of Belarus can choose their own leaders, choose their parliamentarians, that we will have a great cooperation and future together. Until then, I think it's very important for a body like the Nordic Council and the Baltic Assembly to support the democratic opposition and support democratic discussion in Belarus and Belarusians situated outside of Belarus. If I just start with that so other panelists can also chip in.
Thank you so much for this answer. And that brings me to my next point, the point about solidarity with Belarusians abroad. On the 19th of March 2021, we had a big party in Copenhagen because the Danish foreign ministry at that time, Jeppe Kofod, announced the change of the name of Belarus from Hvide Rusland, that literally means White Russia, into Belarus in the Danish language. The name was put on the screen and was lit up in the building of the foreign ministry in the center of Copenhagen, and it was such a significant event for Belarusians, both in Denmark but also those who live around. So this was a signal that was sent to Belarusians also inside the country. We know you and we acknowledge your national identity. A few months later, we also saw a fantastic event in May in 2021, same year in Riga, when the Belarusian flag, the white, red, white flag that Madam President told us about, was hoisted up and replaced the official but very Soviet-style flag in red and green during ice hockey championship. And I'm honored here today to have people who have actually been part of this significant identity change and identity perception of Belarusians in the Baltic and Nordic countries. Mr. Stakis, I have a question for you. As a country, part of the European Union, Baltic Sea region, Nordic Council of Ministers and whatnot, Latvia, what can Latvia show to Belarus? What can Latvia offer to Belarus in the future when Belarus will finally become part of this family, of this community? It will probably have to do a lot of rebranding, reinventing itself, or going back to some roots. And here national symbols and language and culture play an important role. So I would like to ask you to reflect on this. Maybe you have some recipes for Belarus.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to speak for such an honorable audience here in Festival LAMPA. And of course, if we think about the free Belarus, the first thing, anyway, what comes in my mind is, again, there is a free Ukraine. I think when Ukraine will defeat the Putin regime, it will also open the window of opportunity also for free Belarus. And I think Belarusians are aware of this. That's why there are so many who fight now in Ukraine, I don't think there is rebranding needed. The real rebranding actually is get rid of the Russian influence, to get out of the Ruski Mir. This is the rebranding itself. It's easy to say, it's not so easy to do. We know what price is paid by Ukraine now for this decision. Also, we paid a high price. I still remember the economical crisis in the 90s. And yes, we lost a lot of income, and many people were disappointed, but there is no other ways to do. So I think this is the most important rebranding needed. About the lessons, I think there is one good lesson to learn from Latvia, and maybe one lesson why I'm not so proud of. And the good lesson is that diaspora is the most crucial, actually, factor in who's going to play a significant role, at least That's what happened in Latvia. 2 of our former presidents were from diaspora. Vairvīķa Freiberg played so significant role to get us back on to European Union and also the NATO. Also, Egils Levits, who was one of the author of the Declaration of Our Freedom. There's a journalists from the diaspora who played a significant role, business people, and there's 500,000 Belarusians living now outside Belarus, and I think they are one of the future of Belarus. And you know, in United States, if you ask in the Silicon Valley what is Belarus, they say, oh, it's the best IT experts in the world. So they are the people I think who will build a tremendous and great Belarus. The second lesson to be learned from Latvia, and I have to talk about lustration. And there is not such a thing as a partial lustration. Lustration should be 100%, otherwise you will pay very high price in the future. Those people who are rich and powerful now on the Lukashenko regime can't be powerful anymore. Those people who are in charge of institutions, even though they could be quite popular, like mayors in the cities, should lose their jobs immediately. There's no other ways. And also those people who are cooperating with Lukashenko regime, secretly or openly, should be, listed. These books should be open. We didn't open our books. Those people who were cooperating with KGB in Soviet times, we remained this information secret for some time, and I think this was a mistake. And then, don't get me wrong, I don't talk about the punishment. These people have to say that this was a mistake, and we do regret this. If we want to build a transparent and trustful society in the future. So I think these 2 topics are very important. And since I am newly elected MEP, I have to a little bit talk about as well what Europe should do to support Belarus, not only the Latvian. I think there are 3 main topics. First, Europe can push Lukashenko to release their political prisoners and help their families. Lukashenko is about the same type as Putin. He understands the language of force. Only the difference between him and Putin, in my mind, is that he don't like to lose the money. Putin don't care about that. And do Lukashenko regime losing money? No, because of sanctions? I don't think so. Actually, I think he's earning the profits. And this is something Europe can change. And they are moving toward this direction, but it happens too slow in my mind. So second, of course, and this is again a little bit about lustration, those NGOs and opposition who are now documenting every single step to put every single person who is in charge of those terrible things what's happening in Minsk and all around the Belarus. We should know those people, and we definitely should help those organizations and those oppositions who are doing this job financially, and of course also support them, by heart. And third thing, of course, we need a voice, right, in Europe who are talking about those things. And Madame Tsikhanouskaya, you can count on me in the new elected parliament. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I can see our time is flying, and we have more and more people joining us. That's a very good sign. And in order to give place and space for all possible questions and discussions, I would like to reserve some of your attention to the second half of the panel. But before that, I would like to address a question to one remarkable lady sitting to the left, Birgitta Hammer. I'm honored that you could make it all the way from Denmark to Latvia and to tell us about women in power. What is it like? And why is it important that it's not only men, but also women who write history? I will be scrolling through some slides on the background because Ms. Hammer is a historian, so she has a lot of material to share, but we will display them on the screen. So, men and women, who should write history?
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for inviting me. I must say, I fell in love with Belarus in the beginning of the 90s when I went to Minsk 3 times. Wonderful city. And I look forward to seeing more of Belarus later on. Yes, women should write history because in my opinion, women are often better at paying attention to both men and women, or I should say men were not as good as women in this point. For hundreds and hundreds of years, history has been written by men. And these men have very much focused on strong leaders fighting their power struggles. Women were in the background, they hid behind the men, they were suppressed, and they were simply not visible. I have written a book about a remarkable woman, a Danish queen, Sophia. Sophia lived in the 12th century. She was born in Minsk-Polotsk, daughter of the Prince of Minsk-Polotsk, and she became a Danish queen. Her husband, the king, was one of the most well-known Danish kings, and lots have been written about him, nothing about Sophia. When you look closer at the lady, she's a remarkable person, highly intelligent, very influential, at times even power struggling. But nobody knew about it, except you, Andre. And so I wrote the book. Sophia spent her life in 2 different parts of the Baltic region, but she maintained all her life her family relations to Minsk-Polotsk. History, in general, history is important. History is essential in building and reassuring unity and identity. I would like to mention 2 texts. Pavel Tereshkovich wrote and published last year an article about Belarusian history. It's called Language, Identity, State, and a Farewell to Illusions. It's brilliant. Everybody should read it. I learned a lot about Belarus reading it, and I think it's so important that we get to know each other's histories. I brought the second text, a brand new Danish book, brand new. In English, it's History as a Weapon. It's intriguing, but I'll push it aside because I want to have time for my final point. Professional historians are very good at opening our eyes to make us see the links between our countries. In Denmark, we have about 5 historical national treasures. People know them, all people in Denmark know them, and they are a symbol of unity and identity in Denmark. One of them is a small crucifix. It's made as a piece of jewelry. It's beautiful and it's precious. And historians, artists, scientists have claimed for hundreds of years that it was made in the 13th century. And it was made in the northern part of Germany at a time when Denmark was much bigger than it is today. Hold on. That's not true. This small crucifix was actually made in Polotsk, and it was brought to Denmark It was made in the 12th century. It was brought to Denmark, probably by Queen Sophia. It was proved by a historian last year, no, not last year, but recently, and the historian is Lizaveta Dubinka-Huska. It's a fantastic and very meaningful link between Belarus and Denmark. Thank you.
I cannot help holding my emotions. Thank you for this answer. And I understand it's really difficult to put the history of relations between two countries in a one short speech. But I do hope, and I share the opinion and wish of Madam President, that we will have your book in Belarusian one day. And hopefully this day will come soon. And now, over to you, Andrei. We touched upon history a little bit. We started to talk about history as an instrument. History can be a weapon, or history perhaps can also be a remedy sometimes. It can also help and cure. So what would be your take on historical myths? How do they cure, how do they remedy our past so that we can be healthier in the future?
Yes, thank you, Elisaveta. Can we show my presentation? Yeah, very good, thank you. So, being a professional historian, I would like to bring your attention to the origins of the history. And we historians, we work with mainly two stuff. With what happened, it's a good question, but also what we remember, how, in which way. It means also what we would forgot and what we would remember. So back to this origin of the Nordic history of Belarus, we should start with the first state on the territory of Belarus. You see on the screen, I hope so, Principality of Polotsk. And it was definitely Baltic states. Riga did not exist. We're talking about 8th, 9th century. So, but the coast and the Baltic Sea trade existed. So this state was really much connected to the Baltic and Nordic. We know this from the medieval chronicles. Next slide, please. Yeah. City of Polotsk, a beautiful city in the northern part of Belarus, was founded around 1860, 62 by Viking Ragnvald, who came, according to the chronicles, from another side of the Baltic Sea. Another side of the Baltic Sea, we have Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, right? So, and it was a large city, maybe one of the largest this time in the Baltic Nordic region. Stockholm was did not exist. Uppsala was small. So it was a really large city with thousands of population, multi-ethnic, definitely, Scandinavian, Slavic, maybe Baltic. Next slide, please. And you see here also on the picture of Polotsk from Tsarist period of time, you still have Daugava, Dvina River. You see the ships. It means this trade with Riga was important with the Baltic Sea from 9th century until 20th century. Next slide, please. And we have also another city, Vitebsk, a beautiful city, founded also this 1974. And on this picture, you see very large cargo ships ready for take the way to Riga. So this trade way from Scandinavia via Riga to Belarus was extremely important from medieval time until the 20th century. Actually, Belarus have got most of the European products via Riga. And don't forget that in the 17th century, Riga was the largest city of Sweden, not Stockholm. So next slide, please. And then when we have this Torvald on the picture, Torvald Traveler, I published a popular article 2005, which became like, very known, well-known in democratic cycles of intelligentsia because he came, 986 to Poland, and he baptized people. And on the picture you have a fresco from a Roman Catholic church in Rasona in Polotsk region, and artist Vladimir Kondrusevich said in an interview, I read Andrei Kotlyarchuk article and I decided to do this. And this is very interesting because from the history we know that this classical narrative that Vladimir or Volodymyr of Kiev baptized his Slavs with the Greek bishops from Constantinople and founded Eastern Church. This was 3 years before, and Torvald came from the West. According to Lukashenko, nothing came which good from the West. So, but we have this Torvald, and for me it was interesting to follow the reaction on this article. So a new church opened, then art pub in Vitebsk, Torvald was opened, and people discussed very much what about Torvald. And he was really forgotten, totally forgotten. In the Soviet period of time, we had a school books, History of Belarusian Republic, nothing about Torvald, nothing today, so the state tried to mute this. And of course, we knew very little from German chronicles, from sagas, and Soviet historians said, yeah, sagas is not really about sources, but this повесть временных лет, primary chronicle, this is very much reliable. What we know now, Ukrainian historian Alexei Tolochko published a book about this primary chronicle. According to Alexei, professor, he told that this chronicle was created at least 150 years after the events. And the author, maybe Nestor, used some Scandinavian chronicle, but could not Scandinavian. Therefore, we have this Sea News and True War, two Scandinavian princes. We could not find some mention of this Sea News or True War, and the historian believes that it means that Rurik came to this East Slavic area with sin hus or true warring with his family and his various. It's like that. So I think both these documents, sagas and primary chronicles, open a space for different interpretation. But this is a real person. This is a real person, existed. So maybe the last slide, if I have. Yeah. And here we have connection with Iceland, because this is a beautiful memorial. It's Iceland, because Torvald is known in Iceland. He tried first to baptize Icelandic people. And then after not so successful attempt, moved to Belarus and tried there. And it was successful. We know that 100 years later, a Viking Brand came to Poland and he said that they have Torvald Church and they considered this person as a saint. So thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrei, for this journey back in history. And let's hope that all the things you mentioned, we will be able to retrieve from this capsule of time in the nearest future and reinvent ourselves in the family of Nordic and Baltic neighbors and friends. I would like to mention that actually this panel is supported and organized so in the capacity of Belarus Research Network for Neighborhood Policy. It's a project supported by the Nordic Council of Ministers, and it's carried out by Latvian Institute for International Affairs as a lead partner, Danish Foreign Policy Society, European Humanities University in Vilnius, and Danish Belarusian Culture Society, Belarus. If you're interested in reading more about things that have been mentioned here, you're welcome to visit the network's website. And here we also have some prints of the recent articles about Belarus, about the Belarus relations with the Baltic and Nordic countries. So we have some 20 minutes for your questions and comments from the audience. And now my role becomes a bit more strict, because if we have a lot of questions, we'll probably need to moderate. But I hope I'll be able to give the floor to all who would like to ask or to comment. So, who's the perhaps the bravest from the audience? It's time for discussion. I see Stefan, yes?
If no one else, I will go first. Yeah, well, I agree fully with what Martin said about the importance of the Belarusians in exile, the Belarusian diaspora. They're important now, they will be important in the future. But my question would be, maybe mainly to you, Martin, but possibly also to Bryndis, about borders. There are, of course, many legitimate reasons why we are now building borders with Belarus. It is becoming more difficult for the people remaining inside Belarus to leave, to come out. And what would you say? I mean, if to close the border totally would probably not bring something good, because these 9 million or so people remaining there are not all Lukashists, far from, and we need to keep somehow contact with them and also leave them a possibility to travel. And this is becoming more and more complicated, to come to Latvia, to come to the European Union, also to the Nordic countries. What do you think should be done to keep these channels open with these Belarusians?
I have a very short answer to you. I don't know, but I promise to pay attention to this problem, because I really don't understand fully this problem. Sorry.
Can I add something to this? Because I think what you mentioned is, I think, the main issue in politics now. It's border, refugees. And I remember when we had this session in Reykjavik, and we had Ukrainian parliamentarians, some Kara-Murza from Russia, and then some from Belarus. And they said it was so important that we would always welcome people from Russia and from Belarus that wanted to leave. Now we see that the Finnish parliament is voting on keeping their border closed to Russia. And that is for a reason. That is actually for the reason that Putin is using refugees from Syria or wherever in a way of hybrid war towards Finland and to the European Union and the Nordics. So we have also had similar with the Polish borders, what Lukashenko was doing. So this is actually, I agree, I do not have the answer, but we have to have focus on this. This is really difficult, how human beings are being used in this hybrid war and poor refugees in that sense. So it is a huge matter, but unfortunately I do not have the answer either. But we have to have a focus on this. It's really important.
Thank you. I would like to mention that you can just raise your hand if you have a question or signal somehow. So 1 and 2, please, over here. Oh, just hold on a second. I think you will get a mic in a second from the mic. Can somebody please give a mic to...
Okay, now it's on. Firstly, I would like to say that I'm thankful to all of the speakers for coming here today. And secondly, I would like to know more about the literature where we can learn about the Baltic origin of Belarus, because we know a lot about Slavic origin of Belarus, and it's like mainstream theory, but the Baltic origin, it's really interesting, and I would like to accept Belarus as another Baltic country, but I need to learn about it more firstly. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a particular speaker you address this question to, or shall we choose maybe Andre? You would take that?
Yeah, everybody who's competent enough is...
unfortunately, we don't have so many books written in English about Belarus. It means you can search for some articles and maybe use some database in National Library. And there is some articles, good one in English, about different perspective of Belarusian history. What I would like to comment on your question, it's a good question about this Baltic history of Belarus, that actually before the Second World War, we had 4 Baltic states, not 3 Baltic states. If you open Britannica Online, 1930s, there is an article, Baltic states. We have 4, and the 4th one, it's Finland. Finland was absolutely recognized as a Baltic state before the war. What Finland did after Second World War, when the Soviet Union occupied the Baltic states, Finland moved from the Baltic states to the Nordic states. And actually, in fact, we have this concept in Scandinavia, I'm working in Scandinavia, Northern and Nordic countries because of Finland. Before Second World War, we called Scandinavia and Scandinavian countries. But after, when Finland moved, we have Nordic countries. And it was very successful rebranding, very successful cultural process, and we have a lot of research about that, how Finland, being Baltic, became Nordic. And now, as I know, it's this idea quite popular in Estonia, to move. But it's also, it means it's possible what we would like to remember from our past. And Belarus, until the end of 18th century, was a part of the Baltic Nordic region. It was a part of Europe. So it's possible to use history, to use the past, to make this process successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. And I have one more question over there. Oh, one more comment. Yes, from Brigitte?
Just one comment. I want again to recommend the article I was talking about. Belarus, Language, Identity, State, and a Farewell to Illusions, written by Pavel Tereshkovich. Sorry, I'm glad Pavel is not here. I know I'm not pronouncing his family name correctly. But it's brilliant, and it gave me an insight in Belarusian history. And I know it's been printed and
we have a copy over here, a physical copy, but it's also found on this website, in fact.
Yes, and I can tell you we had it translated into Danish, and it's been published in Danish as well as in English. So my recommendation.
Oh, thank you for this point, Birgitta. And at this time, the microphone traveled over to you. So.
Yeah, it ended up here. Thank you for the discussion. As the board member of Student Union in Latvia, my question is going to be regarding what can academia and maybe students abroad and in Belarus do to bring the region closer together. And this is open to all panelists.
Thank you. Would like to take it? The right way? What the students can do. Yes. Yes, what students and universities, academia can do in this regard.
Yeah, we are doing our work, writing and producing some books and articles. Sometimes these academic articles is not so influential, so I'm trying to write some popular articles, and I know it works because, for example, people in Belarus know me as the author of these popular articles, not academic, scientific articles. But I believe also in this people's diplomacy, that students should meet each other. It was something with Stefan idea. I would like to see students from Belarus, for example, summer school in Sweden, in Latvia, why not? So it's people who create the regions. It's not politicians. So we need open society. It's coming to Belarus. I believe to it. We need democracy. But what we could do now is to open possibilities for young people, the future of Latvia and Belarus, to meet each other. So this I agree with Stefan. It's extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And it was just yesterday when Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya was visiting Daugavpils, and there was an agreement reached with the University of Daugavpils, as I understand, who will open up some vacant spaces for Belarusian students, master students, to study in Latvia. And I can see that you also have something to add.
I just want to add that what the students are really good at, it's on protesting, especially if you need protect the human rights. And they are clearly the violation of the human rights in Belarus. So I would like to see those protests more and more from the student side. I think this is the way to pay attention to those problems.
Great.
And thank you. If I could add a little bit on that. In November 22, the Nordic Council put forward a recommendation to the Nordic governments to invite a student exchange program with Belarus and with the democratic forces in Belarus. And we are still discussing this with our foreign ministers, but I think this is one very important issue, as has been raised here. But also, I agree, young people and students are of the best fighters for human rights. And we have talked a lot about books here, research, but then the young people uses, I don't know, Twitter X or Instagram or other medias that can get like knowledge that is here out there to so many people. So I would definitely recommend, yes, please rise up. Free Belarus.
Yes, thank you. And is it... Sorry. So as often happens towards the end of discussion, it becomes livelier, and then we feel like we are running out of time. But we still have 9 minutes, so we still have some time for questions. And your comment, Brigitta, to this question.
Yes, and I'll do it shortly. I'll just say that in Lithuania, we have been having thoughts about exchange of students and pupils, schools, and we have thoughts about starting out virtually, letting Danish pupils meet Belarusian pupils, and then go on from there. But we're still working on it. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, the circumstances were not on our side at that time. But Birgitta is actually a former headmaster, and she has a huge experience with exchange projects of Danish pupils with those from Czech Republic, yes, and Sweden, I believe. So perhaps one disclaimer from my side that yes, the student exchange and summer camps are very important, and this is also something that I know several universities are trying to pursue. And a few years ago, we started a Belarus research network together with the colleagues mentioned above, the academia, so you can follow the research, be in the loop. Maybe you would like to contribute with something. We highly welcome contributions as well. There is also a program called Yopinet, which stands for Young People for Balticness, and this network includes young people from the Baltic states, Nordic countries, and Belarusians as well. Now it's much more difficult for Belarusians to travel from Belarus, but they can still participate and come to those summer schools. And actually, in a week's time, we'll have this program in Tallinn. Please follow, and please feel free to join. I still have space for questions and comments. Just all you need is to raise your hand. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Niels Mujniks, human rights guy. Elections are a vulnerable time for authoritarian regimes. As far as I know, Belarus will have elections again in about a year, a little bit more. What can we do to help the democratic forces in Belarus during those elections?
Thank you. First of all, you all have to understand what you call elections has nothing in common with this ritual event, circus, farce in Belarus. Of course, when all the media are ruined, when all the NGOs are liquidated, when leaders of all the parties are in prisons or in exile, when civil society is suppressed, when people live like in Stalin's time era, in total fear, because KGB are everywhere, we can't call elections. Of course, it will be a process of appointing of Lukashenko by Lukashenko, and that's it. It will not be turning point, of our history. Of course, we as democratic forces and people inside Belarus, we will use this moment to, for big campaign, anti-Lukashenko campaign or pro-European campaign. We will see. We are checking our capacity at the moment. But what we have to do now, to deal with this event is to strengthen our media, strengthen our civil society, strengthen the voice of pro-Belarusian democratic leaders all over the world. For you preliminarily say that Lukashenko is illegitimate and any so-called elections will not make him legitimate again, that we will not allow this dictator to turn off the page of our history. We have thousands of political prisoners in Belarus. People are detained every day. 15, 20 people in Belarus are detained every day, and how can we talk about elections? So please don't think that it will change anything in Belarus, but what can change is victory of Ukraine, it's strengthening of civil society, of Belarusian democratic forces, strengthening of our national identity, weakening of the regime, and this is where you can help. But it's not just one moment assistance. It's difficult, very painful path, and we welcome, of course, all of you to walk this path together with us. Thank you.
Thank you. So, dear audience, yes, we have space for one, maybe two more questions. So, if you could please go over to Elisabetta over there.
Thank you very much for the discussion. Just a few brief comments rather than questions. I think this is the year for taking some action on Belarus, especially because I just traveled from Kiev, where I currently work, and there's increasing pressure on Ukraine, even if we all living here in Latvia live in hope that Ukraine will prevail in the war. There's increasing pressure on the government and the president of Ukraine to, at some point, agree to some sort of negotiations with Russia. And this, of course, means, and we all know that the future of Ukraine is very strongly tied to the future of Belarus. So this is the year we shouldn't forget about Belarus. This is the year when students should perhaps try to engage more in writing their thesis on Belarus, putting the right accents, not reproducing the old narrative that we cannot help Belarus because the history of the last 30 years is simply lost and they've missed their chance, but indeed reinforcing the narrative that Belarus does have a European past and it can have a European future. So whereas this is nothing of substance, I'm simply expressing the sentiment I have now living in Kiev, that I'm afraid that Belarus will simply get lost in the narrative in the shadow of the war. And it's our duty that are sitting here today to speak up and remind about Belarus every day. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Dear panelists.
Thank you, Elisabetta, for this valuable comment. We still have a few minutes. One, and counting. I think we are now all in reflection about what we have heard, and especially after a statement from Elisabetta, who just came from Ukraine, who is also engaged in Belarus Research Network on behalf of Latvian Institute for International Affairs. So I would like to encourage all of you to follow and support this great work that's being done by our colleagues from Nordic and Baltic states. Thank you very much to the Nordic Council of Ministers for making it happen, for facilitating, for giving the space to this discussion. I'm myself happy about the result, and I hope that it will continue and you will stay tuned about Belarus. Maybe one little note I would like to add, since it was not mentioned while dealing with the questions, and of course we cannot deal with everything and any, but we started with symbols. And back to one of the questions about what students can do, what academia can do, and what we all can do let us remember that language is key to understanding and key to mutual understanding and communication. And Belarusians, in fact, have their own language. The language in which books, poems, literature is written. And I would like to encourage maybe to explore a little bit. So you can bring Belarus closer to your heart, just like Mr. Eriksson has done. Thank you. Thank you very much for participating. And, well, we have one more. Okay, you have 90...
It's not a question, really. I would like to address to dear guests. I'm a graphic designer. And today I'd like to cordially invite you as my debut as a visual artist. I try to communicate things about Belarus because my background is mixed Belarus and Denmark. And right behind the scene, right behind the tent, there is an improvised poster exhibition about Belarus, about human rights situation, and also my subjective imaginative visual identity for Belarus as a Baltic, Nordic country of the future. Thank you.
Well, as Danish Cultural Institute, we are happy to have this, albeit quite spontaneous, contribution to this discussion panel. So I can only encourage you and myself, very curious to see what is in the exhibition mentioned. Thank you all for devoting your time, spending your time with us here today, because you know there's so many temptations, so many interesting discussions, and now the sun is out, so you probably would like to explore other panels. And on this, I would like to wish you a great day, a lot of fruitful discussions, a lot of food for thought and inspiration that we can carry on with us at least for the next year. Thank you very much, dear panelists. Thank you to the organizers, dear colleagues, and Madam Tsikhanouskaya. We are once again honored and pleased to have you here with us. And I know that you will also continually have a very busy schedule today, being in other panels. So please follow if you're interested to hear more about Belarus today. Thank you.